Trump wants to get an end to the bloodshed. The people in this country do, the people in Ukraine do, Russians do as well. How he gets there is going to be up to him. He was elected to do that. And while we can hand wring and pearl clutch all the way to a peace deal, the fact is Trump, on his watch the first time, Russia did not try to take any more land, but it did so under Obama, Biden, and Bush. So he has a pretty good track record here of keeping things pretty safe and secure around the world.
There's so much to say about Donald Trump's speech, though, this morning. Of course, we were listening out for his comments on Ukraine and the rest of the world. We've been covering that in the programme thus far. But he was talking to Americans, not us, to borrow a phrase actually that got us started on the act of coining phrases to begin with. It's the economy, stupid.
As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. Their policies drove up energy prices, pushed up grocery costs, and drove the necessities of life out of reach for millions and millions of Americans. They've never had anything like it. As president, I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again.
Donald Trump also pointed to some of his measures against what he sees as trans ideology.
I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie. And our message to every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you.
You forget the Christian thread running through a lot of Trump's thinking. It's really important to his philosophy, and we underestimate it in this country a lot, because religion isn't really part of politics here, but it really is over there, isn't it?
Religion, service, and the American dream. A lot of that address overnight was about the American dream. It was about people volunteering in their communities. It was about family. It was all of those American values, which Donald Trump is essentially saying, if we don't sort out what's going on in the world, I can't protect these things for you. It's quite a clever domestic argument.
And he also then says, and I want to spread it. I want to take the Panama Canal, I want to take Greenland, I want to take Mars.
To protect us. That's his whole argument, is to protect you.
And whether you buy that or not is an interesting question. Some people in America obviously clearly do, based on the election and his continued support. Let's hear from one of his supporters now. Hogan Gidley is the former White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary during Trump's first administration. He's now a media consultant for Speaker Mike Johnson.
It was outstanding. I thought he did a really good job kind of articulating the things he has already done in such a short amount of time. I mean, Joe Biden gave those speeches after being president for years and couldn't point to that many successes. Trump was rattling off the things he had already done along the southern border, for example, opening up energy exploration, so many things to make people's lives better. Already talking about the economy too, and we know what a problem we have right now with our economy, and so that was a really big part of it to start off. But then, in addition, I couldn't believe how he wrapped all of it after he talked about so many different things, pointing to the future too, of all the things he wanted to accomplish, and how the restoration of the American dream was back and the golden age was being ushered in. All of those things kind of married together for a really good speech. Again, very long, but that's kind of typical for Donald Trump. In addition, though, a lot of people did get up and clap, and a lot of applause breaks as well. But long speech, good speech, and it wasn't one for the media, it was one for the people. And I think it resonated at home.
That expansionist idea is interesting, isn't it? That there's a sort of optimism there. He talks about how he wants Greenland. He talks right at the end how he wants to get an American flag in Mars.
Yeah.
Does that matter in terms of the detail, as in, do the American people really want Greenland and Mars? Or is it more about the tone of this, that he wants to show that he's looking to broader horizons?
I think it's both. I mean, look, he's not the first president to talk about Greenland because of the strategic area it is with military bases, et cetera. So that's been part of kind of the conversation in this country for a while. But at the same time, you're right. I think there's a overarching theme about really looking forward and expansion. Donald Trump is so focused on making people's lives better, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed, but he definitely focuses on the American people first. How we get there, I think, is less important to so many around this country. Instead, they just want to get to the end goal where they can afford gas and groceries, and where we don't have illegal aliens pouring across our southern border, and there aren't wars breaking out all over the world. And if that means having a bigger footprint in the Panama Canal, if that means having a bigger footprint and building partnerships with Greenland, then that's what he's going to do. I think the American people like that. I think they want that. Mainstream media members here in this country really do focus so much on every little thing he says, and they have to focus and cover on the words leading up to the result. What we want is the actual result. We want the benefit.
It's an interesting way you say that, because that's the classic Trump position, is it? That you got to take him seriously, not literally. That does mean you give him a free pass to sometimes say things that aren't true, though, because if I were to say he said something untrue, you'd say, well, the most important thing is the result. America and your party has become about the ends, not the means. Is that fair, do you think?
No, I don't think so, because, I mean, when you're talking about trying to come to a peace conclusion for Russia and for Ukraine, for example, he's got to bring them both to the table. So he puts together this incredible deal for Ukraine that gives them a business partnership with America, which implied in that is a tacit level of some support and some security for Ukraine, but it also brings Russia to the table. Joe Biden didn't have any of those things along the way. The media allowed him to say things like a minor incursion is just fine. And then after they invaded Ukraine, he would say things like, we're going to keep support up for Ukraine, quote unquote, as long as it takes. They didn't drill down on that and ask questions or freak out. They had no off ramp. They had no plan for diplomacy, no way to end it. And no one asked any questions. Donald Trump all along the way is doing what he does to bring people to the table to make these types of deals, as this one example. But it's not looking past what he's saying. It's realizing he has a way of getting to a solution that many people don't understand and don't get. But the fact is, it always comes back to protect us.
Does it matter that in doing that, he effectively regards Russia and Ukraine as morally equal? I think one of the things that the Europeans don't quite understand about Trump, or maybe they understand it but they don't quite like it, is they would say when he talks about Russia and Ukraine, he talks about them as sort of equal antagonists in the conflict. He doesn't talk about Putin's illegal invasion. He wants to bring Putin to the table, and that means it feels like he might be giving Putin a moral free pass for what he's done hitherto.
Well, I disagree with that 100%, but let's be careful about what we're talking about with moral equivalentism. It's the EU, for example, that has clearly spent more money getting oil from Russia than it has giving money to Ukraine. So you could argue it's the EU that has actually funded the war for Russia. Donald Trump brought that up in the speech tonight, which is an incredible statistic to showcase kind of the hypocrisy of the whole thing. Trump wants to get an end to the bloodshed. The people in this country do, the people in Ukraine do, Russians do as well. How he gets there is going to be up to him. He was elected to do that. And while we can hand wring and pearl clutch all the way to a peace deal, the fact is Trump, on his watch the first time, Russia did not try to take any more land, but it did so under Obama, Biden, and Bush. So he has a pretty good track record here of keeping things pretty safe and secure around the world.
The vice president has been winding people up in this country as well. I'm sure you'll be aware of this. He gave an interview to Fox News where he said a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. He's talking about Donald Trump being a better security guarantee than some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. He was talking about people who've offered troops to Ukraine, which has only been two countries, France and the United Kingdom, both of which supported America in Afghanistan, supported America in Iraq. And that's wound some people up because they feel Britain has been a pretty good ally when it comes to blood being spilled on foreign soil. And they're concerned in this country that's a bit of a slap in the face from the vice president?
Well, look, I don't speak for the vice president. I didn't even see those comments. But let's be clear. Donald Trump's the president of the United States. And so as he goes, so goes the foreign policy, so goes the domestic policy. These are his decisions. He was elected to do so many different things, not just here at home and in taxes and energy and border, et cetera, but he was also elected because we remember such stabilizing peace around the world when he was president the first time. Again, didn't see the quote from J.D. Vance. I need more context, but you know, he's the vice president. The president kind of leads the policy. J.D. Vance follows.
Just finally, you mentioned the economy. Is any part of you worried that with the imposition of tariffs, with what's going on in the world as a whole, energy prices can move and shift? Inflation hasn't come down straight away under Donald Trump. He said prices would come down straight away. They haven't, perhaps understandably. There's a worry that his sell to the American people is predicated very much on things getting better. What happens if inflation doesn't move? That must still be a concern for you.
Well, it's going to move, and Donald Trump was able to accomplish it the first time. You know, this is kind of the uniqueness of Donald Trump's second term as president. We have something to base it on, and that was the first 4 years where we had record low inflation. Biden comes in, and of course, there's record high inflation. Donald Trump had, record-setting tax cuts for 80% of Americans. Working class men and women receive those. So those are the things he wants to re-implement. I mean, right now, there's a chance that we could see the largest tax increase in history if the tax cuts are allowed to expire, which is what Congress is working on with the president right now. But listen, this is his bread and butter. And I think the American people understood, too, as they went to the polls, that other countries have been taking us for granted for a long time. And this isn't a trade war he started. This is a drug war. And when you have allies around the world and people say, how could you do this to allies? How could you put tariffs on allies? Well, what kind of ally allows other nations to filter through people that bring drugs into this country, that lead to hundreds of thousands of deaths every year, killing our American citizens, crippling our communities, not to mention putting a drain on our resources? You need to have better allies.
Is that really true of Canada, though? I mentioned it just finally before you go. I don't want to keep you too long, Hogan, but is that really true of Canada? I mean, there's not that much fentanyl crosses the border from Canada. And then it appears, and Trudeau said this yesterday, and I don't know how serious this is, you'll have to tell me. Does Trump really want to get Canada into the United States? That feels fundamentally unlikely from an outside observer. But you can say.
Well, look, I think it's kind of funny because it was Trudeau who basically said our entire economy is based on America. Trump was like, well, if that's the case, why don't you just become the 51st state then, if you're so reliant on us? Listen, this is something, again, that's fundamentally different than years past and then from presidents past. And that is, other nations typically will put tariffs on us, and they'll try to do that to our production, our goods, et cetera. And we don't respond in kind. And Donald Trump tonight even pointed out that there's reciprocal trade, and we'd like to have that with other nations, where if you're going to tariff our stuff, we're going to tariff your stuff. Why wouldn't we be fair and equal? And listen, I've worked for politicians for 25 years at this point. They always run on this little mantra: we're all for free and fair trade. Well, the free trade always comes, but the fair trade never follows. And I think Trump says, all right, if that's the way other nations are going to play it, then we're going to bring tariffs onto you guys so we can rake in some money and see some benefits as well. Look, long-term political strategy, a long-term economic strategy, but the American people want relief. And Donald Trump is designed to do that because he understands how the economy works. Now, as you said, if these things don't happen, midterms are coming up in 2 years. It's going to be hard for Republicans to win elections. It's going to be hard to set forward a policy basis for another Republican to run for president as well. But we're supremely confident that's going to happen because it happened once before.
But you're not going to have Canada as a 51st state anytime soon.
Who knows? Not to my knowledge. But look, a lot of people say, look, we want the territory, not the people. But we'll see what happens.
There we go. We want the territory and not the people. He's making a joke there. That was Hogan Gidley, the former White House principal deputy press secretary. But it shows how normalised that part of the discourse has come. Trudeau gave a speech yesterday saying he's trying to crash our economy in order to annex it. Now, I just don't know how true it is. Does he really want Greenland? Does he really want Canada? Does he really want Mars? Or are they just ambitions because those ambitions set the tone of everything else he's talking about?